Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Chhoda and welcome to my channel. Now I think this is one of the most important training videos I've made in the recent past on my channel, and I'm going to talk about the Fed's GDP predictions, the gross domestic product predictions through 2022 and how they have the potential to completely transform your life and your money. I'm going to talk about three things in this video. The first is the GDP history over the past 20 years. The second is the shocking and the good and the positive prediction from the Fed about what's likely to happen through 2022. And number three, I'll tell you about what this means for you and why it's great news for you. Before I get started, if you're not an existing subscriber yet, please click the subscribe button below. Please enable notifications so I can give you instant updates in the future. And please click the like button if you learn something new in this video, because it does help out the YouTube algorithm and it's your way of appreciating me for the effort that I put into these videos. So let's get started. Let's take a look at a chart which shows you the GDP growth of the United States over the past few years. So what is the GDP, or the gross domestic product? The gross domestic product is a monetary measure. It's a financial metric of the market value of all the final goods and services that have been produced in a specific time period. In short, the greater the number of transactions and the greater the size of the transactions, the higher the GDP. If people are buying more cars, more expensive cars, if people are buying more homes, more expensive homes, if people are buying more televisions, more phones, more computers, if people are eating out more, then the GDP is higher. The higher the GDP, the greater the growth of the economy, the greater the expansion of the country. Now, GDP is governed by buyers and sellers. A buyer usually uses cash and credit to buy something from a seller who usually sells either goods, whether it's food, whether it's any other kind of item that you would buy, stuff that you would buy online. They sell services. Let's say you get someone to fix stuff in your house, or you get some sort of a service, like you go get your haircut, that's considered a service. Or a seller could also provide what's called as a financial instrument, which could be stocks or bonds or even real estate. So the more the number of buyers, the more the number of sellers, the more cash or the more credit that exchanges hands, the greater the number of transactions, the greater the size of the transactions, the greater the GDP. So let's take a look at the GDP over the past 20 years so you get a sense of where we've been. And it's quite astonishing when you look at how the GDP has changed for this year and how the GDP is projected to jump right up next year. I think some of the numbers that the Fed shared are unbelievable, and if they are right, and I do believe that they are right, that they're going to be right because their predictions are based on a lot of economic data and a lot of underlying trends, then we have a lot of reason to celebrate. Before I get into that, let's get into the GDP over the past 20 years, and you'll take a look at this chart on your screen right here. So you can see that back in the year 2000, this is before 9/11, this is before the dot-com bubble crash, the GDP was at 4.127%. This is the annual GDP data in the United States. So you can see now that in the year 2000 it was 4.127. In 2001 it came down dramatically to 0.99. It started improving in 2002, 2003. In 2004 it went up to 3.799, and then the cracks in the economy because of the subprime mortgage crisis started to emerge and the GDP started to decline until it bottomed out completely, and the US was at a minus 2.537% in 2009. Then after that, the economy started to get back on its feet. In 2010, we were at normal GDP for a developed country like the United States. And in 2012, 13, 14, and even in 2015, it was all looking normal. In 2016, it went down slightly. This is all par for the course. And in 2018, it went to 2.927. Now, this chart doesn't show you 2019. 2019 was 2.3%. And 2020, because of the effect of the pandemic, is going to decline by 6.5%. In fact, the GDP in 2020 is expected to be minus 6.5%. That is the most dramatic drop the United States has ever seen in the history of the country. Now, the good news is that the Federal Reserve predicts that the GDP will not only come back from the minus 6.5 next year in 2021. This is big news because it's a prediction of the Federal Reserve that the GDP will not only bounce back to where it was prior to the pandemic, but it will go even higher because of all the pent-up demand that exists in the economy. We want to go out. We want to be able to do simple things like get a haircut. I mean, I know I've been needing a haircut for a long time and I finally got one. I hope you guys like it. Actually, I had to have my wife help cut my hair because I still haven't gone to a salon. But speaking of GDP, we need to go out and do stuff. We need to go out and get a haircut. We need to be able to go out and eat. We need to be able to go to the doctor. A lot of us want to be able to get our physical. A lot of us want to just go out and get our car serviced and do stuff like that. So there's a lot of pent-up demand in the economy, and assuming, and let's be optimistic about the fact that the social distancing measures have worked, there will not be a second wave, the vaccine will come along, all of these things I'm optimistic about. If all of these things do indeed happen, then the economy is going to bounce back fairly rapidly. By the way, my definition of fairly rapidly is not a couple of months, it's going to be a couple of years, because again, the predictions from the Federal Reserve point to a minus 6.5% GDP in 2020, and then a bounce back all the way to plus 5% GDP in 2021, which is quite significant because that tells you that we will come roaring back in the economy. There's a high probability that you, yes, you, my subscriber watching this video, will be able to get back to your spending habits. You'll get your job back. You'll then be able to have money to be able to spend, which in turn will become an income for someone else, and so on and so forth, because that is how the economy works. That is how the circle of money works in the US economy, and for that matter, any economy. So here's an article on CNBC that says Fed sees interest rates staying near zero through 2022, and I've done another training video talking about that. GDP bouncing to 5% next year. This is significant. Now on the economy, the Fed sees the GDP tumbling 6.5% in 2020. Remember, we were at 2.3% in 2019. So in 2020, we'll tumble 6.5% from that high of 2.9%. In other words, we'll be at negative 3%, 3.5% GDP in 2020. But in 2021, not only will we make up that negative, but we'll be at a 5% plus. So in other words, we will be well above where we were pre-pandemic in 2021, according to the Federal Reserve. Now keep in mind, in an effort to boost the GDP, the Federal Reserve has lowered interest rates to 0% or close to 0% all the way through to 2022. And again, I've done another training video talking about that, because it is the reduction in the federal funds rate which allows borrowers to borrow at a lower interest rate, which allows more credit and more money flowing throughout the economy in an effort to boost the GDP. So the article says, along with the rate decision, central bankers projected that the economy will shrink 6.5% in 2020, a year that saw a significant halting of business activity in an effort to combat the pandemic. However, 2021 is expected to show a 5% gain, followed by 3.5% in 2022. This is good news, and both are considered well above the economy's long-term trend. So in other words, the economy is doing strong, the economy is expected to bounce back and bounce back to higher levels than where it was pre-pandemic. In fact, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said the economic projections were made with the general expectation of an economic recovery beginning in the second half of this year and lasting over the next couple of years, supported by interest rates that remain at their current level near zero. In other words, they will keep the interest rates low in order to boost the GDP, and therefore they expect the GDP to bounce back to not only where it was pre-pandemic, but potentially higher. Here are some of the forecasts from the Federal Reserve. Here are the key numbers that they released. They expect the federal funds rate to be between 0 and 0.25% through 2022, with the long run rate at 2.5%. In other words, after 2022, they expect to raise the federal funds rate up to about 2.5%, which, if you remember the graph, is what they were on track to do until this pandemic hit, and then it went straight down. They expect the GDP to be minus 6.5% in 2020, and then over the coming years, they expect it to be at 5%, 3.5%, and then at 1.8%. In other words, they expect it to stabilize. The Federal Reserve also expects unemployment to reduce over the next few years. They expect that over the next few years, unemployment will be at 9.3%, then 6.5%, then 5.5%, and finally at 4.1%. And here's another encouraging statistic. They expect inflation to be at 0.8%, then at 1.6%, then at 1.7% and 2%, all within the normal range of inflation. So all of these are good signs. Now, there is one thing that we need to take into consideration, which is that Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell said that the pace of the recovery is dependent on the path of the pandemic. In other words, if we have a second wave, if we have to reinstate social distancing, reinstate state closures, then all of these numbers could be won't hold up because of further damage to the economy. I'm optimistic that that won't happen. And he said that this is not an official forecast. This is something that they expect to happen, assuming all of the other factors fall into place. So what does all of this mean for you? Here's what this means for my subscriber. Based on the prediction from the Federal Reserve, and assuming that there is no second wave, assuming that we're going to come out of this, everything's going to be fine, we're not going to see an uptick of cases, assuming there'll be a vaccine in the next few months, we can expect not only a lot of us, not only most of us to get our jobs back, we can expect all of us to start spending again, and we can expect the economy to get jump started again. We can expect the economy to not only get back to where it was pre-pandemic, but even better than pre-pandemic in the next couple of years. Now, things are not going to improve in the next couple of months. In fact, there could be some more pain ahead depending on which state you're in and depending on whether the pandemic is going through a surge in your state or whether it's declining in your state. There are a lot of metrics around us in terms of whether people are starting to go out, whether people are starting to eat out, that I've talked about in other training videos. But here's the important thing to remember. Things will get better. In 2021, we'll expect the GDP to be back up again. People will be spending again. You will have your job back, or you may have to look for another job, but there will be economic activity. You may have to switch gears, but as long as you're able to adapt, and I've done other training videos on other job opportunities that you should look at, as long as you're able to adapt, you should be fine. Everything should be fine. Shops should open up. We should be able to go back to the movies again. We should be able to travel again. We should be able to eat out again, and things are going to be fine. I'm hopeful and I'm confident that this will be the case. I appreciate you all so much for watching. If you learned anything new from this training video, if you have a ray of hope from this training video, please go ahead and click the like button. I would really appreciate that. That does help out the YouTube algorithm. Please click subscribe and please enable the notifications button if you'd like to get future economic updates from me. And I'll always give you the facts as they exist. If the data is encouraging, I'll give you the news as it comes in. And if the data is not so encouraging, I'll be able to teach you how to prepare. Thank you so much for watching. Again, please click the subscribe button. Please enable notifications. I release videos at 2 p.m. East Coast time every day. So make sure you mark your calendars and check out the videos and comment early, because I'm available in the first half an hour to 1 hour. And I do engage with everyone commenting when I post my videos. I'm so grateful that you took the time to watch this training. I'll see you in the next training video. Thank you so much.